everyone sees a picture of something. So, these decisions seem innocuous at the time, but then they have serious consequences. So this has been an area that I'm excited about, is the development of new algorithms that take the place of human judgments or decide things in a way that they couldn't be decided before. So I don't know if you saw it, but there's a website for the work that we're doing called auditingalgorithms.science. So it's a new website that tries to bring together the driving question of that work is there some way that we can look inside the black box of an algorithm? What can we do if we are on the outside and we don't control the system? Are we powerless, or is there some technique that we can develop that allows us to see consequences without ownership?
We have seen it, I suppose, but I have here one maybe more broad question.
Sure.
Because when you speak about automation, it is a process, and I suppose, and when we study, it sounds difficult differently in different languages. Internetization or informatization.
Yeah.
Or processes.
Computerization, probably.
Huh?
Or computerization, yeah.
Yeah, computerization. I mean, these are different processes, and they are named differently in different countries and contexts as well.
Yeah.
But whether they are connected somehow with each other. I mean, if you study, for instance, computerization, is it useful for understanding this process as they are? For instance, on power networks level or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think in English, the literature on computerization has ended, in part because computers are ubiquitous, and so there's a move away from this word. Instead, automation is being used in part, but it's not a very good word either, because really what's happening is that the logic of the computer is becoming more complex. So as one example, in some other work, I sometimes talk about the death of the simply sorted list. So we used to have lists of information that did not have complicated rules for how they were organized. So for example, we would look at our email and it would be organized by most recent first. So it's a reverse chronological order. It's a very simple and easy to understand way to organize a list. And we would look at, pretty much any kind of information on the internet. It did use a computer. It was already automating a process that was not automated before, but the logic of the sort or the filter or the curation is simple. But in the last about 8 years, we've seen a move toward much more complicated and opaque organization of information. So for example, my email now, I use Gmail, and there's the priority inbox, there's the importance flag, there's the tabbed inbox, and all of these are ways that change the sort of the information so that it is personalized and it is complicated and it is really unknowable to me, the way that a reverse chronological order was understandable. So everything has gone this way. It used to be that on Facebook, when we looked at Facebook, you had a list of friends and you had to click each friend to see the posts made by those friends. Then they added the idea of a feed, but the feed was simply a chronological list of things your friend had posted. So the innovation I'm trying to highlight, or the change I'm trying to highlight, is that at some point they decided to filter the feed and to curate it so that what you saw was not a reverse chronological list, but it was an unknown sort. And I think really everything is kind of now an unknown sort. It's filtered and chosen by a process out of our control. And so some people have called this an algorithmicization, but I think that's a very difficult word. But it's about the logic of computing changing. So some of it is about automation in the sense that some processes are human and they're being replaced, but other parts of it are not. Other parts of it are about the computer doing things that no human could have done. And there is no particular person put out of work by the new informational process. But nonetheless, it's a dramatic change. So the best word I have for this is algorithm studies. Some people have called it algorithmic culture.
So you mean it is? I suppose that it is some language difference probably, or something, because when I think about these processes in Russian, it is usually more about its some power who makes people use automation or machines or internet or something. Asian is about this thing. Then there is a government or something who makes you do it. I mean, who says we should make, or probably this is some Russian specific of development. But I suppose that it is just. I mean, in every country there are different powers. Somewhere either it is corporations, somewhere government takes part, a big part, and so on. But you speak about it like rather, let's say, not natural, of course, but I mean, you speak about the process as it goes, right? I mean, not about the power structure, or it is also a part of your interest.
Oh no, it's absolutely about power. I mean, the transformation of our information systems to include filtering and curation is a story not about the development of technology, but about the way that technology is sold and packaged to seem as though it's helpful, when in fact what's actually happening is an entrenchment of, say, in the examples I just gave, private corporate interest. So for example, people who use social media often think about the like or the heart or the star as an interesting function that was added to these systems, probably because people would like it. So they think of it as a neat button that probably corporations added because people would enjoy signaling that they like something. But when we look at the history of these features, we see that in Facebook's example, they're probably best known for the like in the countries where Facebook is the dominant social media platform. That they're best known for the like, and their headquarters, actually, the sign in front of their headquarters building is just a giant thumbs up. It's the giant Facebook thumb. And so this like, where did it come from? They were looking at the list of status updates that they were showing to people on their homepage, and they thought, people are getting so many friends on Facebook. The average number of friends is increasing so much. We need some way to filter this. And they describe this as being for the benefit of the user, and it may be for the benefit of the user, but they also needed a way to control and insert advertising into the stream of status updates. And so the like button was invented not because they thought it would be fun for people to signal to each other, but that they needed as a corporation, a source of data that would help them prioritize. And so they added the like so that the people could train the machine. And then why do they now think that the sorting of this information is their key reason for existing, their key driver of their value as a company? So all of these companies, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Google, they think of the algorithm as the center of what they do, and it's secret, and it's their core. And yet when we do studies of users, so a colleague of mine and I have done these studies of users and how they use feeds, and we found that there's this, not the majority, but there's a noticeable minority of people who prefer having a randomly generated feed. So if you show them the best possible curated, filtered set of information, they don't like it as much as if you just use a random number to show, because they like serendipity or they like curiosity or something like this. So why, if you can satisfy at least some people with no curation and no filtering, why do you need this elaborate apparatus that sorts and filters and curates and selects? I mean, the reason is control, is power, to insert advertising, and also to be sure that you as a company, your company has a role in the transmission of information that isn't just passing it along. It's to add a logic where you have a say. So for instance, on these platforms like Facebook and all the ones that, many of them still have features, although they're increasingly disappearing. Many of them still have features where you can turn off algorithmic control. So in Facebook, you can click most recent news feed instead of top stories news feed, and it changes the sort to show the way it used to be. A few platforms still have this ability. Twitter has a button that you can press that changes it from your personalized trends to the trends everyone would see if they weren't looking at personalized trends. And it's interesting, the language used in the user interface, because the language is, don't press this button. The language for Facebook is, warning, you shouldn't switch away from our curated feed because you won't be getting as good service and it will be bad for you. And if you, I've been told that if you, I told my students to change their newsfeed to most recent as an experiment, and they tell me that if they leave it that way for a while, it automatically changes it back. So the setting is automatically reversed to top stories, and that's because the insertion of a point where the platforms have influence is essential to the corporations. So it's not a story of a neutral technology that happens to evolve that we get better at filtering or better at curating. It's instead a capitalist logic where the corporation needs a way to insert itself into the stream of information, in part to monetize you. I mean, it needs to sell your data, and to do that, it needs to better profile you, and it needs a mechanism by which it can insert advertisements in between your organically occurring communications as clearly as possible. I mean, it's not as clearly as seamlessly as possible, I guess.